a treat today. I'm excited to introduce to you certified career coach, Hallie Crawford. She is a coach, speaker, and author from Atlanta whose coaching company helps people find their dream jobs. Hallie moved to Atlanta 10 years ago from Chicago to escape the cold, be closer to family, and as her Southern uncle says, put some South in her mouth. She has not yet developed a Southern accent, but we'll see. For the past 12 years, Hallie and her team of coaches have helped people of all ages worldwide achieve their career goals. She's published numerous books, including Career Transition Tips for Singles and her Identify Your Ideal Career Path workbook. She is regularly featured as a career expert in the media, including CNN, Fox Business News, and the Wall Street Journal. Hallie has experience going through her own tough career transition, what she likes to call her early life crisis, and is still learning to appreciate that while she's in her early 40s, she gets asked on airplanes if she's old enough to sit in the emergency exit row, and walking around her neighborhood near Emory University, people think she's her young son's nanny instead of his mother. Thanks so much for being with us today, Hallie. I'm going to turn this over to you. And one last housekeeping. If you all see an arrow, two-arrow symbol up in the upper right hand of your screen, you can maximize the slides for this presentation simply by clicking on that. So, Hallie, let me turn this over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Caroline. That's perfect. I still laugh at those stories about my uncle and everything else. That was a great intro. I appreciate it. So thank you, everyone, for being here today. We're here to talk about coping with career regrets and also, more importantly, focusing on the future, how to avoid making those same mistakes the next time around, because we want to focus on the future. So when I was 25, I had an early life crisis. I was living in my mom's basement, and the only thing I felt I had going for me was this cute Halle Berry haircut. This is me on the left. And I basically had 5 different jobs in 5 completely different industries by that time. Talk about career regret, right? And I felt like I was determining what I didn't want to do as opposed to what I did want to do career-wise, like checking things off the list instead of finding my direction. And during that time, I remember vividly, I sat in an interview in Chicago talking to my prospective boss, who was just like my dad. And I was thinking 2 things, everyone. One, I can't take this job. This employer, prospective boss, is just like my dad. And I love my dad, but working with him all day, every day wouldn't work so well. And then I thought, I can't take this job. I'd have to wear pantyhose. And everybody, I hate pantyhose. So what did I do when they offered me the job? I said yes, and that was my second major career regret. I tell you this because I want you to know I understand how this feels and having those career regrets and what it takes to get out of that and avoid it the next time around. So I'm here today to share with you some first steps to help you not make those same mistakes and help avoid them in the first place. Give you things to consider to start making the right choices. All right, so here's our agenda. Take a look at this slide for me for a second. So we are going to talk about these 3 steps. And as I go, everyone, Caroline is going to dive in when she has comments to make as well, because we'd like this to be interactive with the 2 of us and do Q&A at the end too. So the 3 steps we're going to talk about is how to define what's fulfilling for you in the first place in order to align your professional goals with that. Number 2, how to identify the right career goals and career moves by balancing the practical and the passion, okay? And number 3, know when it's time to take a professional risk and how to do so, okay? So is that okay, Caroline? We'll allow people to submit questions as they go, but then we'll do the Q&A at the end. Does that sound good to you?
That sounds perfect.
Okay, cool. All right. So let me show you all this first before we dive into those 3 steps. So this is the career model that we use with all of our clients, and this is the foundation for our advice and tips today. So this helps our clients define their career direction or their ideal career, okay? But it also will give you the components to consider in order to identify the right career goals as well. You have to consider all of these things on this page, okay? So to determine your ideal career, these are all the pieces you need to think about. And to understand how to make the right career decisions, as you go, you really do need to consider these as well, okay? Let's keep going to the next one and talk about step one. And by the way, everyone, I'm going to go through these tips relatively quickly so that we have enough time for Q&A at the end, because I know everybody has a unique situation and they're going to have questions. So the first step is to align by defining fulfillment. So one of the things we absolutely have to do is align your career goals with what's fulfilling to you. Now, this doesn't mean throw caution to the wind and take a job that doesn't pay your bills. Okay, remember that on the model just in the previous slide, compensation is one of the components you have to consider. But if you start with career action steps or moves that would be truly fulfilling to you, then adjust them to compromise down the line if you need to, you will get results that are bigger and better than you would have otherwise. Let's face it, we all have to compromise in our career goals in some way. That's just reality, and we don't want to ignore that. We can't. But I always have people play big at the beginning, and they can adjust later. But remember, everyone, if you start small, you're going to get small. And if you play bigger and really go for what's going to be fulfilling for you in the first place, and you have to compromise later on, you're going to get better than you would have otherwise. Okay, so align with fulfillment first. So let's talk about this for a moment. Okay, so first of all, the way that I define fulfillment is there are two basic components here. You've got to look at the heart piece of it and also the head piece of it. Okay. By the way, when you're thinking about fulfillment, a great question to ask yourself after this call today is, how do I define success? How do I define success? And to think about that, check in with yourself regularly about this, because too often we get caught up in how society defines success or how other people we know do, okay? So the heart piece means, you know, that sense of meaning, that sense of accomplishment, the passion or enjoyment that we would get out of our career and the tasks we perform every day. And the head piece is compensation, life balance, those priorities that we all have, the practical ones that we need to pay attention to in order to take care of ourselves. So both of these play into the equation. Why is this important? We know why this is important in order to know what's fulfilling for you, to define that. It's important because we will be more fulfilled, we'll be more successful, we'll be better parents, better employees, etc. Okay? And how to define, and actually let me do this here, because I think this is going to pop up for us. Okay. How to define personal fulfillment, let me get both of those up here, is first of all to define values. And Caroline, jump in if you have any thoughts on this too, but the way that we define values with our clients is we have them think about, and everybody write this down so you remember it, think about a peak experience in your life. It could be personal or professional, it doesn't matter, and write about it. Write about what was cool for you or engaging about that experience. Yeah.
Absolutely. I definitely think, you know, a lot of times when we're thinking about our careers, we only focus on what you've done professionally in the past, but it's so helpful to look beyond that, perhaps, to those experiences that you've really had, excelled in, and flourished in.
Yeah, that's so great, right? And it can even be volunteer work. It doesn't have to be traditional work stuff. Yeah, that's a really great point, Caroline, because I find too often that people think of, you know, only practical things. They only think of the work experiences, and then they kind of limit their thinking as a result.
Right.
The other thing is, in terms of the heart piece and identifying values, is to write down your must-haves. So develop a list of those things that you feel like you have to have in order to gain that sense of enjoyment in your work. So is it helping people solve a problem? Is it educating them about something? Is it analyzing financial data, engineering, whatever it is that you enjoy work-wise or personally too? Write those things down. Those can be your must-haves, okay? And then the second thing in terms of the head part of this, so to speak, the practical part, right, is to clarify your priorities. And there's a life balance wheel I'll show you all in just a couple of slides here so that you can understand those categories and those things you need to think about in order to identify those practical considerations. Does that make sense, Caroline?
It does. It does.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's go to the next slide here. And I'm pressing this on 2 different screens, so it gets confusing for a second. So quick example that I wanted to share with you, and then Caroline, if you've got any examples, feel free to. I worked with a client, Paula. She was actually here in Atlanta, and she was unfulfilled. She was a lawyer. And when we worked together, we talked about her career goals and realigned them towards her values more. And if you read this on the page here, she basically wanted to leverage her past experience and wanted to make a certain income. That was the head piece of it. But her values weren't being honored at the larger firm where she worked. It was the wrong work environment for her, the wrong kind of culture. But also she wanted to work at a smaller firm to see a greater impact on her clients. That was one of the values. So she shifted her career direction, found a job at a smaller firm. And I want to point out here, everybody, this wasn't a huge dramatic shift. It's not like she, went to be a circus clown or something to be fulfilled. A lot of times the shift we make can be much more subtle in order to find that fulfillment than we think it needs to be.
I completely agree with you, Hallie. There are so many times where the reason for dissatisfaction in a workplace is not the functional work that you're actually doing. It's, there may be a cultural difference in the way you like to work and the way the organization that you're currently working for is run, or just some expectations aren't going to be met within that particular employer. So yes, and the natural reaction sometimes is I need to make a dramatic shift, but that's not always necessary.
Yeah, and I would even say, and I don't know what you would say with the people that you've worked with, Caroline, that really like at least 8 times out of 10, probably 9 out of 10, the change is much less dramatic than people think, and they've been too scared about it, so they don't look at it rationally, and when they do, they realize, oh, this isn't so bad.
Absolutely.
So before you take that next job, everyone, or when you're thinking about your next career steps, identify your values and priorities so you don't get into that regret mode. Okay. All right, so let's look at this next slide here. And let me get all of this to pull up. All right. Oops, too many transitions. Hold on, everybody. Sorry about that. I get excited with the transitions. I think I need to tone it down. So in terms of defining fulfillment, everybody, so first of all, you need to ask yourself, okay, what are my career goals? Hopefully you have some written down. I have had clients before who do not, so that would be step 1 if that's the case. We actually have our clients develop a 1-, 3-, and 5-year plan, career plan. And you need to think about, okay, are these career goals aligned with your values after you've done that peak experience exercise, for example, okay? Double check it. And step 1 is, okay, begin with your values. And I always tell people to identify about 5 of them. That's enough. It doesn't have to be 20. I think that muddies the water. So 5 values is reasonable. You can talk with a friend about your peak experience and get them to help you pull out your values. Step number 2 would be on this slide here, completing the life balance wheel to identify that head piece of it, your life priorities. So complete the wheel to identify those practical considerations. What do I need to do to take care of myself from a practical perspective in each of these areas? And step 3 would basically be develop or revise that list of career goals based on these 2 things. Does that make sense, Caroline?
It does.
Okay. So this is the practical piece of it. Remember, we've got to balance the 2. And by the way, everyone, with this wheel, you can change the categories if you want to. These are kind of standard ones that we use with, use with our clients. But if you want to change one of the categories or rename it, totally fine. It's your tool to use, okay? All right. So step number 2, and I just had to use this picture because this little guy is so cute here on the bottom right. Step number 2 is to expand your goals and your thinking. It's kind of like what we were talking about a moment ago, where usually the change doesn't have to be as dramatic as you think in order to make it right for you or find that fulfillment. And it's the same thing here, where I find that a lot of times clients are just more fearful about making a move or taking a risk, and they have to kind of expand beyond that, okay? And here's the thing with this, Caroline, and tell me your take on this, but we always hear, do what you love, the money will follow. Well, yes and no, okay? Right. I love what I do, but I worked very hard to get here. The money did not just follow in my lap. The way I say it is that if you do something that you love, it won't feel like work, and that's definitely the case. But what I find is you have to balance the practical with the passion in order to be successful. You have to have both. Does that sound right to you, Caroline?
I think that sounds perfect. You're right. There's so many external factors with decisions you make that are out of your control. But if you're doing something that you truly enjoy, you're right. It's not going to seem like arduous work.
Yeah, it does. It makes a huge difference. But yeah, keep in mind that it's gonna take work. So this isn't about being Pollyanna. It's just gonna show up on my doorstep. Okay, so let's take a look at this step and the components of it. So we talked about this under the 3 steps, this dream first and dream big a few moments ago already. So defining that fulfillment first, and I always encourage people to spend several minutes, even 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever time you need with your career goals, and really be expansive with your thinking and dream big. You can always tone it down later, okay? Then bring in the practical. So if you look on the slide here where it's bolded, bring in the practical and think about, okay, if you're looking at a new job, is it the right compensation? If you're looking at, it's time for me to get a raise or a promotion, is it the right time? You've got to prepare yourself and prepare your case for that. So bring in the practical element of it. And then the other piece here, and remember everyone, these 2 things, compensation, and then if you look at the second bullet point under bringing in the practical, the talents, skills, education, and experience, those are all on the career model too. So remember, whether you're defining your dream job, everyone, or you're looking at your next career moves and action steps, you have to consider all of these things, okay? And why is this important? It's important, again, like we said, because if you start small, you'll get small. And what I have found, and Caroline, I'm curious if you've seen this with people you've worked with too, that usually practicality too soon at the beginning of the process, whether it's career goals or defining the direction, it limits our upfront expansive thinking. Not enough people do it, and then they end up with these small goals.
Right. I can definitely see your point on that, Hallie, and yes, that has been the case, that if you aren't opening your mind to possibilities, then yes, the goals can get too small.
Yeah. So I always have clients spend a few minutes, and actually let me move to the next slide because this is going to be on here. And I'll give you this illustration in just a moment. At the very bottom here, everyone, I suggest to people with a friend, not just identifying ways to, practical ways to implement the goals and action steps you have, but brainstorm with them, have them help you make them bigger. Because sometimes, someone who's not in our own situation, not in our own head, grappling with the fears or whatever it is, they can come up with new ideas that we may not have thought of. So I actually call it your dream team for your career, that you've got a set of, friends and family members, 2 or 3, doesn't have to be a huge number, but that help you brainstorm ideas about your next career move, okay? So quick illustration here is Tracy in Atlanta. When I was working with her, she had a passion for health and wellness, and she had a lot of different ideas on her list. One of them was dietitian. And she was very interested in that, but when she looked at it, she realized it's not going to, the compensation is honestly not going to be as high as she wanted it to be. She was in sales and was used to a certain compensation. And also for her, she was not interested in going back to school for the amount of time that it would have taken to become a dietitian. Point being, she took that off her list, and she found out about becoming a consultant for wellness programs, so organizations that would go into companies and implement and give them wellness programs to help them save money on their insurance costs. And that was better for her because she could still be in sales, but have her fingers in the health and wellness piece. So this is where you can still get something that you enjoy, everyone, but you've got to balance that compensation with it. And it took her time and effort to figure it out and make the transition, but it happened. Caroline, anything there? Does that all make sense, you think?
It certainly does. And I do think that, you bring up a very important point about career satisfaction and leveraging the skills that you currently have. If you have interest in a new career area and looking at that creatively and saying, okay, how can I get into that realm? Maybe it's not, being a dietitian or, being specifically a hands-on person in that area, but if I can somehow gain the satisfaction of being involved in healthcare, being involved in healthy living with my current skills, that can be a great way to open a door and gain that satisfaction you're looking for.
Yeah, so like gain it maybe in your personal life as well. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, I'm thinking of the illustration that you gave, that skills that she brought the sales skills to that new job, but it's a new industry area that she was able to get in through leveraging that background.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's kind of like what you were saying before about how maybe it's just shifting companies, everyone, with a different culture, or using the same skill set in a different industry. That happens all the time too. You do have to identify transferable skills, right? But it's possible. Okay, cool. Yeah, great point. So please know that, there are ways to implement these changes and action steps. It's just a question of planning, everybody, and being methodical about it. Okay, I'm really thinking it through. Okay, so let's go to step number 3, and this is about taking risk. So here's the deal. We all know this. You have to take risks in order to get what you want. Otherwise, things are going to stay the same, status quo, right? So you've identified the fulfillment, you've balanced that with the practical, and then after that, it's time to understand the implementation and the possible risks involved. And make sure that there's enough risk so you're not getting the same thing, but you're mitigating that risk as well as much as possible so you're not hanging out to dry, so to speak, okay? So let me actually do this to pull the rest of these up. So we talked about this already, why the risk is important. Without risk, there's no reward. And like I said a second ago, bottom left here, the key is to prepare for it. So how you can evaluate your action steps is first, develop that list of action steps based on your values and the career goals you've identified in the first 2 steps, okay? And evaluate them based on, will it move me towards my goal? I know this seems like, basic and practical, but I can't tell you how many times I'll ask a client this question and they don't know the answer. Will it really move me towards my goal? I'm not really sure. And sometimes the answer is actually no. They've just kind of picked it out of a hat and not thought it through. So with each action step, you need to think about that. Will it move me towards that, and how so? And then if there is risk involved, how do you minimize it? Do you need to take it step by step, the changes that you want to make? Do you need to implement them over time? Do you need to get buy-in from someone that's important at work? Do you need support? There's always going to be risk, everyone, but the question is evaluating it and making sure you handle it correctly. Caroline, any thoughts on that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I do think, I've said so many times throughout the years, everyone, your own parameters. So your own tolerance for risk and those things that affect. But it's so important to think through that and say, okay, realistically, what can I do? And what can I do in smaller steps or larger leaps, depending on your own personal situation.
Exactly, exactly. That's perfect. And so let me give you all this illustration, because this could work for some people and not for others. So if you look at the illustration, Derek, in New York City, one of the clients we worked with, he was working at a large financial services firm. He was a financial analyst, and through coaching, he decided that he wanted to be in marketing. He was a photographer as a hobby, or liked photography, and he really had a passion for marketing. In his situation, he was able to go to his boss, explain what was going on, pitch him the idea of moving into marketing. They let him do it because they valued him so much. I just wanted to give you all this example because I want to push you to think outside the box and take more risk than you normally would, because I think most of us play small. But to Caroline's point, this isn't going to work for every single person. It depends on your boss, the culture, etc. but at least consider, like we said, playing big and think of, okay, what are all the possible things I could do? Even if some of them are crazy, talk with a friend about them and narrow down the list based on what is reasonable for you. And it might involve some element of risk, but it will be successful because it's not too much. Does that make sense? Okay.
Sure does.
Okay. So in terms of implementation of your goals and action steps, look at the 3 steps down here at the bottom. You want to review each career goal, and to achieve each one, obviously what action steps are required, which ones then require the most risk, put a star by those, and under each one evaluate the worthiness of it and how you can minimize the risk for each one. So this is kind of just a simple way of thinking it through, okay, and evaluating your action steps. All right, so just a quick review before we get to writing down your own personal action steps. So I want you all to start thinking about, please, any questions that you want to ask in the chat box online. And as a reminder, these are the 3 steps: align with fulfillment, balance the passion with the practical, identify what action steps and risks you need to take, and how to mitigate those. So take a moment, everyone, to think about questions you have. And also, I want you to come up with 2 action steps you will take this week. And by the way, feel free to share those 2 in the chat box because we'd love to hear those from you as well. So while you're thinking about that, I wanted to mention one thing. We are having a fall sale, $100 discount on the first month of coaching. If you're interested in our coaching services, there's our contact information. And think about, as you all are thinking and writing, 2 action steps you will take this week and write them down on your task list. Caroline, any suggestions you want to make for action steps? Can you think of any to suggest maybe?
Well, I think it could be a variety of things just depending on where you are. If it's going to be doing some self-assessment or some research, you know, there's so many possibilities depending on where you are right now and making decisions, or just reflecting on the departments within your own organization like we were talking about earlier. If it's not a dramatic jump you want to make, but maybe you want to be a different player in the same company, you know, just kind of giving some non-traditional thought to what indeed would make you more satisfied.
Yeah. And really, everybody, try to move the fears aside, because I think, I mean, I don't know about you, Caroline, but when people come to me and they're frustrated because they haven't achieved their goals, and I ask them what the biggest obstacle is, they usually look at me and say, well, honestly, it's me, because I've been fearful, I haven't made a plan, whatever.
Right, right. Yes, making a tangible, or writing down, maybe entering in the chat box today, your next step that you'll take this week would be the first step you've made, the first commitment to changing your situation. Yeah, and it is. This is the time to do it because you all are taking the time today to be here. So really make it count. So think about that, everyone. 2 steps. And then just want to mention real quick, we're going to draw a name out of a hat at the end afterwards for a door prize, and we will email you a copy of my career transition ebook. So keep thinking, everyone. And go ahead and start entering questions in the chat box if you would like to. I'm going to leave it up on this slide for the moment to encourage you all to take those risks. So before we get to Q&A, everyone, this was the quote that helped me get through those times when I was fearful about starting my business, about quitting the job that I had with nothing else lined up to start my coaching practice. Is I at least wanted to say at the end of my life that I had tried, and even if I failed, that I had at least tried, then instead of that I didn't try at all. And I love this quote. This is something that I think about consistently. The greatest risk in life is not taking one. So even if it's a small baby step, everybody, just remember it can be something small that you do in the next week. It will get the momentum going for you. Hallie, I have a couple of comments. Let me read them to you and to the group. One individual in the call says, They find it helpful to look at people's LinkedIn profiles as well as job descriptions to see what elements appeal to that person and their goals. And I think that's an excellent, excellent suggestion for anybody out there. A great way to kind of look at different career paths is to go on LinkedIn and look at people who have commonalities or people who are working for companies that are interested or that are interesting to you. What do you think about that, Hallie?
Oh, I love that. That's exactly what I tell clients. It's a great way to leverage LinkedIn in a different sense. And what you can do, everyone, is look at their career path. So if you're interested in something, find those people like marketing director, plug that into LinkedIn, look at the qualifications they have, the skill set, et cetera. It can tell you how to get in an industry and the qualifications you need. Beautiful.
Yes. The second comment I have, and this is a commitment to doing some, making some steps forward. This person wants to work in the music industry. She's already developed a list of people that she knows in the industry, and so her 2 steps forward are to research jobs and to make contact with at least 4 people on that list so that they will actually know what her aspirations are and she can seek assistance from them.
Love it. That's fantastic. Remember, everybody, to piggyback on that, informational interviews are a fantastic way to learn about an industry, to get more information about how to put your best foot forward, and to network for possible jobs, too. And the Georgia Tech Alumni Association, you know, there's a LinkedIn group that's really active, right, Caroline?
That's right. About 32,000 alums involved in that group.
So, hello, like this is something I honestly tell all of my clients, don't forget your alumni association. And they're always like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So it's something that we overlook, and it's a huge network. Those people, everybody, are going to be more likely to reply to you and give you their time, so use it. Fantastic.
Yes, yes.
How are we doing? Any other comments or questions?
Oh, here's a question. One of this person's career goals is to obtain an MBA, but it's also a major risk because of the cost. How would you suggest minimizing the risk without taking out a loan?
Okay, this is a good one. So, and Caroline, feel free to dive in too. I would try to find, I know that I don't know how it works in terms of scholarships, for example, with MBA programs or, you know, other ways that you can find funding, but I would definitely look at that. I would contact the school and tell them your situation and find out from them what possible options are. There's no harm in asking. And the other thing I would say about the MBA, though, is absolutely make sure that that's what you need to have in order to achieve the goals you want to before you make the investment. Because sometimes people will just say, oh, I'll go back to school and I need to get this. Before you make that kind of investment, you want to make absolutely sure that that's the one thing that you need in order to move forward, because there could be other ways around it. Now, not always possible, situational, but just in case.
I think those are good points, and I have known people, I think it's less common than other grad degrees, obviously, but people to be graduate assistants during the time that they are pursuing their traditional daytime MBA. But then, of course, you know, with the many formats that MBA programs are offered in now, the evening MBA programs could be a very good way to mitigate, you know, leaving a job, leaving an income stream, because you could do both work during the day and doing an evening MBA during the nighttime. So that could allow you to have income to continue to come in while also having some obviously outlay of income or admission costs.
Yeah, and maybe in some cases the evening MBA may be less expensive, for example, and then you get a graduate position on campus or whatever. But I would absolutely call the admissions office and don't hesitate to talk with them and say, look, here's the deal. How do I make this happen? And brainstorm with them.
Yes, great. Let's address this one, Hallie. If we don't have a real sense as to our values and direction, are there any free online assessment tools we can use to help us get started?
Yes. So let me give you all a few. So one of the assessments for strengths, talents, and skills that I really like is strengthsfinder.com. It's not free, but it's only $10. Some websites that are helpful to help you brainstorm career ideas are myplan.com, just like my plan, planning a trip. Another one is ONET, O-N-E-T, Center, all one word, onetcenter.org. And then a site that I like is mypursuit.com, like the pursuit of happiness, mypursuit.com. Those are career brainstorming sites that if you plug in interests or skills or values, you can start to brainstorm some ideas that can help you. Now, of course, they're not the end-all be-all. They don't have every job out there, but it can help you get a start.
And just want to add to that, with minimal cost, but there are, we offer both the Strong Interest Inventory and Myers-Briggs Type Indicator through the Georgia Tech Alumni Association. So if you want to reach out to me directly, and I can get you all the details and explain any of those.
Yes, and by the way, everyone, those assessments can be pretty pricey if you just buy them, you know, outright on the website or through a coach or whatever. So I would encourage you to take advantage of that. Whatever you can through the Alumni Association is a great idea.
And we do have another comment coming in. With regards to evaluating the worthiness of risks, how does one get beyond personal biases towards one career goal? For instance, say I list nursing and an executive role with my current agency. Both may be equally risky. What are strategies for getting beyond having a personal bias towards one goal because of the deep passion for one of those goals? And especially if the practicality of that risk may not fit in with my current life responsibilities. So you must have a passion for, say, nursing, but the life responsibilities, and a strong passion at that, but the life responsibilities seem to point you in another way, is the way I'm understanding that.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So I think a few things. I think number one, this is where having an objective opinion from someone else, whether it's a friend, family member, coach, whatever, because we get emotional about things, and sometimes it's harder to be as rational about it. Get an objective opinion is one thing. Another thing would be to talk with people in nursing, for example, because like we talked about with Tracy before, sometimes there are career paths related to nursing or that involve it, but aren't the traditional ways we think about it. And we just don't know about them. So I would conduct informational interviews with people who are nurses, for example, and do that and say, you know, this is interesting to me. I'm not sure it's the right thing. What are related career paths? So again, those informational interviews can help. And then I would also use the websites that I mentioned a few minutes ago and plug in, for example, nursing and the other things for you that are interesting about it. Plug that into those websites because it may help you come up with additional ideas too. And by doing all of that, you may find a different but related path that actually does suit your lifestyle. I hope that helps.
Yes, great. What would suggest, sorry, let me read through this one.
No worries.
Oh, what are some good questions, would you say, Hallie, that you could ask during an interview that would kind of give a good indication on whether that employer, that prospective employer, shares your values?
Ooh, I love this one. That's a great question. So I would point blank actually say, what are the values of this organization? And see if they can answer you. You know, look on their website to find out about the mission and all of that. But I would ask them, what are the core values of this organization and or of your team? I would find out what their management style is, what a typical day is like, and just ask them also to describe the culture in general. And those questions can help.
I think that's great. And those are the questions we have. Does anyone else want to pop in a last-minute question?
And Caroline, while they're thinking, how do we handle the recording of the webinar? Do we send it out? Is it posted or anything?
I will get that posted, but I will actually send it out to you all and with a survey link. So if you don't mind just completing a short 5-question survey, and then you'll have the link to the recording as well in that email.
Perfect.
And one question did pop up, Hallie. In today's job market, we may not readily get the job we are passionate about. A very good point there. In a few cases, it may take more than a few years. So how do we cope with that current, maybe not so great job in the meantime?
Fantastic question. This is where the practicality comes in. So I'll give you advice from my experience. So number one, you always want to just remind yourself that you're moving forward. And honestly, everyone, a job that pays your bills, keeps you financially stable, is a step in the right direction towards your dream. So I had a part-time job. I worked Monday through Thursday. It was a dramatic cut in pay for me, but I took that job because I was able to grow my coaching practice on the side for 2 years. So consistently remind yourself of why you're doing the job that you're doing, even though you're not passionate about it, that it's serving a purpose, and do something, whether it's every day or every other day, to move towards the passion in the longer term. And if you do that, it's kind of like you're touching the dream on a regular basis. That will help you feel better and help keep you motivated. So take a class in what it is you're passionate about. You know, volunteer in it, serve on a board, do freelance work, whatever it is. Do something consistently to move towards the passion, and that will help enormously because you won't feel like you're completely stagnant while you're over here taking care of yourself and paying your bills so you don't feel desperate.
I completely agree with that. Remaining connected to that goal and just reinforcing it through making strides towards it is so important, and making you stay motivated and fulfilled. And yes, realizing that, you know, having a job that is fulfilling those basic needs as far as salary and keeping you stable is a great accomplishment.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question.
All right, let's make this the last one.
Okay.
One of my passions is having my own business, but it would be a risk because I don't yet have a client base. And Hallie, I bet you can talk specifically about this and that you've built your own business. How would you mitigate that? And it sounds like you even addressed that in that response about how you handle 2 jobs maybe at once.
Yeah. So trying to think of different ways you could do it. So for me, I took a part-time job where I could grow the business on the side. So if you can't do that and you need to stay where you are, maybe you do it in the evenings or on the weekends or whatever. But I always encourage people to just get started, like go find some clients. And I'm not saying be completely haphazard about it. And if you're not qualified to do it yet, take the courses that you need to. But I would just go get a client, honestly, because I think we get caught in planning too much and which step needs to come first. And for me, at least, it was better for me to just get the ball rolling, go get a couple of clients, and then the momentum was built up, and I kind of figured it out as I went.
Great. And this actually a great comment came in through on the line. If you can pull it off, sometimes you can offer to work for free at a prospective company. Do some projects for someone, maybe a consulting gig of some sort, and offer yourself as a temporary worker so you can kind of get in and prove yourself. And that may result in something that is more permanent and ongoing.
Absolutely. Do it for a day. Do it on a project basis. I have a client actually, and I'll stop after this because I know we're at time, but he is wanting to do instructional design, and he's asked me if he could work on some of my products, a couple of things that are in the works. And he's doing that for me, and I'll be a reference for him. He'll have an example. I mean, it's fantastic, and he's thrilled. So lots of different ways to do that.
That's a great example. And with that, folks, we're going to conclude. I appreciate so much your time and attention, and glad you engaged with us today and your contributions through questions and whatnot. Good luck to you on making your 2 goals happen, the ones that you're going to make this week. And we hope that you'll join us for future conversations. So thank you all for being here, and especially thank you to you, Hallie, for leading this conversation.
Thank you, guys. It's time to go have lunch. We appreciate your time.
Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.